Okay. All right. So I'll start there now. I'm going to share my screen and let's get going. Okay. So welcome to the In Their Words workshop. This particular workshop is all about what I consider to be the foundation of writing effective or resonant sales copy, which is all based around research. And not enough people are doing copywriting research. And this is one of the reasons why they really struggle when they go to sit down and write their copy or their sales page. They don't know what to say. They don't have the right words, the right phrasing to say. So they get stuck, they get overwhelmed, and it can be a really frustrating process for a lot of people. So in this class, I'm going to give you at least I'm going to give you five. We're going to talk about 5 methods, but I'll give you in the document, there's more methods that you can use, as you'll see, and we'll kind of just touch on 5 of them. So a couple of things before we get started. If at any point you have questions after the class, you can always come back into this document. Similar if you've taken a course from George Cow, just simply highlight any section that you want to ask a question or comment on and just leave a comment, type in your comment, and then I will respond to you usually within 24 hours, but it could take a couple of days over the summer because my schedule is a bit limited. So you can certainly do that. And then, as I said, in this class, we're going to be I'm going to teach you the methods that I use. So when I'm working with copywriting clients, these are the exact methods I use. So as you can imagine, I have worked with many different people. So I've written copy for people who are divorce coaches, people who are in intuitive eating counselors and emotional eating counselors, different therapists. I've worked with people who are experts in gut health, and all of these things I have no limited knowledge in. But as you can imagine, when you do the research and you have to write for someone else, that research is so important. And this is where I spend the majority of my time when I'm working with clients. And when I'm working for myself, I still spend the majority of my time in research. And then through that process, once we kind of cover the methods of research, I'll show you how you can organize your data, what that looks like. It's a simple tool that you can use to keep track of all of the data that you're collecting and gathering from your people. And then I'll give you a process that will help you. I think, Dawn, you mentioned you wanted an outline, and there is going to be an outline that you can follow. This isn't a writing class, but I will give you some tips on how you can kind of transfer that information over. I'll show you what that kind of looks like. So, as I said, why is research so important? Research is the foundation of writing resonant, effective sales copy. So I'm just going to come off screen here. Okay. What most people find is that, as I said, they go to sit down at their computer screen, they pull up a blank document, the Google Doc is sitting there, or Scrivener, wherever they're writing their content, and they're feeling extremely overwhelmed, and they're feeling, just frustrated at their screen because the words aren't coming, or they write something and they're scrapping their draft and they're scrapping. They don't know what to say. They don't know where to start. And there's this misconception in copywriting that you need to supply the language when in fact you really need to find the language. And that's what this class is going to teach you about. It's about connecting with the right people, hearing and listening to what your people are saying, how they're describing the challenges, the frustrations, the desires, and everything that they're going through in their life as it relates to your offer, your product, or your service. And then using that to help you write more resonant sales copy, using their own words to help you write in a clear, specific way that really speaks to the hearts and the minds of the people that you want to reach. Okay. So as I said, the research, now I kind of made a guesstimate here. If you look at this graphic, I would say on average, 50% of your copywriting process is actually research. Now, this does vary depending on what you're writing, who your audience is, like the specific project. But on average, especially if I'm working for a client and I know nothing about their business, I know nothing about their audience, 60% of my time is spent on research. When I'm working for myself and I have a better understanding of my audience, especially if I'm working on something that's just a smaller offer, or I'm writing for, say, a warm audience who already are familiar with my work, which is typically who I'm writing for, then I may not need to conduct as much research. And once you do that research once, and if you're offering similar things down the road, you often have a lot of that research that you can refer back to and reflect on. But for the most part, most of it is not writing. I would say a very small portion of copywriting is actually writing. It's more or less doing the research and then organizing the data, putting it into a structure and a flow that makes sense, and then being able to analyze it and figure out what's the most relevant for your people. Okay, I see someone joining here. I'm just gonna stop for 1 second and just let Onami in. Okay.
Hello, I'm so sorry I'm late.
That's okay. We have a very small class, so I just came off screen share just to let you know. If you have any questions, I may not see the chat, so feel free to come off, or if you want to leave them in the chat, that's okay. I'll come back to when I come off screen share. So we have Dawn joining us. It's just probably going to be the two. There might be one more, but if they're not here now, I would imagine that they're not coming. So we just got started. So at the end, I'll give you all the materials and access to the feedback form, and you will get this too. Right. So we just talked a little bit about why research is important. And so now we're going to talk about like the purpose, the whole entire purpose of your market research is really to help you know and understand your audience at a much deeper level. As I said in the beginning, most people aren't doing this. They sit down to write, or they assume they understand the needs and the wants of the people that they're trying to serve. A lot of times people have been they're teaching something, their modality is something that they're teaching because it's something they were struggling with. Then they've learned, the process, and now they want to give back and they want to teach people how to overcome X, Y, or Z. And what often happens is they become an expert in that topic or that field. They become 2, 3, maybe 5, 10 steps ahead of where their people are at. And now their language no longer resonates with the people who are at the beginning stages of the journey, who are just getting started. There's a big gap in between what you're experiencing, trying to reflect back to what your people are actually feeling. So a big part of it is really just to understand where your people are at. And the other piece is really for you to be able to hear what your people are saying. So then you can use their own words to help you write that sales copy for you. Most of the copy that you write is actually not, like I said, coming from yourself. It's coming from your client's own mouths. So this is a huge piece and the importance of doing this copy, or this research, I should say. So the most important thing really is that you need to know who you're writing for and what matters to them. As I said, most people think about what they think their clients need or want, and there's a big gap and mismatch between what their clients are actually telling them that they need and want. So how do we find out what people actually want? And this all comes down to talking and finding the right people. So you might be wondering, well, where do I find the right people and how do I get these people? Even if you don't have clients, you might have people on your newsletter list, your email subscriber list, people on Instagram. You can chat with. What I would do, and I often did this in the earlier days, and I still do this, is find people who you think would be a good fit for your offer. So if you're teaching an e-course or you have a new coaching program coming out, who do you think would be a good fit for that program? Ask friends, family, acquaintances, old coworkers, people you've worked with, someone that you know, maybe you know them on Facebook, and ask them if they know people who would be a good fit for your offer. And then, talk to those people. This is where you're going to get the richest data from, is by actually going out there and speaking to people, getting in front of the right people and hearing what it is specifically, what those challenges are. So if I had to ask you, Dawn, are you doing research in your business now, or how often do you do client research or market research?
I've done it in the past. I've interviewed quite a few of my students, like fairly intensive, and found out all their, it was either something George or Tad had me do, was like, what were they, a bigger picture of who they are. So,
right.
But I want to say one thing here right away. The biggest hang up I have, and it's coming up as we speak, is the idea of sales copy, sales. That word immediately, it tongue ties me right away when I and I'm trying to find a new, I'm so metaphorical. If I could find a different metaphor, like communicating, gateway, I don't know, entrance, something, because that the word immediately puts me on, I gotta sell this, and I don't want to sell it. Yes, I want people to, participate, but that's one of the biggest things I like to take away today is a change of, the beginning of the process of changing my attitude, because like I said, I signed up because I'm really doing a lot of this right now, because I'm redoing all my courses and redoing my communication system with my clients. So, so
Yeah, I think, yeah, I could see how the word sales or sales copy would be triggering, because I think for a lot of people, it starts to sound like you need to be persuasive and manipulative.
yes,
That
yes.
gets people like, I totally resonate with that as well. I wonder if something like, and we can think about this, I don't know if anyone has any other ideas. I know TAD refers to them as sales letters, still has the word sales in it. I usually call them an offer page. It's just where I talk about my offer. I'm literally just telling you what it is. It's there. If it resonates and speaks to you, here's the information. The reason,
Offering is a nice. I had put offering on my webpage for my offerings, so
yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
nicer word for me. It's like
It's gentler. I agree. Now, I
sounds
will.
sacred. Almost got sacred.
Mhm.
I'm not offering something versus I'm selling something. So
Yeah, I agree. And one of the reasons, it's interesting you point that out, and I'll just mention this as well. Sales copy was not initially in my title. However, I chose that language because when I talk to people, that's how they describe it. So this is one part of the research. Now, obviously, you can go with intuitively what feels right for you. But one thing that I want to caution you against is you want to think, how are your people searching for things online? How are they describing it? Are they looking up like, how do I write an effective offer page? Perhaps like they might be, there's could be a lot of people out there saying that, or they saying like, how do I write a sales page? How do I write sales copy? So that was one of the reasons. That was a very intentional choice of words on my part, because I thought this will speak to people. They'll get it better than an offer page, because that's my language, but it might not be how my clients are actually speaking. And it doesn't mean, that we're going to use manipulative sales tactics. It just means that I'm meeting people where they're at with on their journey, if that makes sense, Don. And we're going to talk a little bit about this as we go deeper into it, because this is where some of the disconnect comes from. And that's what I was referring to is I've worked with many clients who, for instance, I had a client who was an intuitive eating counselor who struggled with this for 20 years, for many, many years. Now she teaches people that. And then when she writes copy, she forgets what it's like to be where they're at. So she was worried about using certain language, but it's like you have to meet people. She didn't want to use the word diet. She didn't want to use weight loss. But if that's where her people are at, you got to at least meet them where they're at. And then you can take them on the journey of how you're different, how you're not, X, Y, or Z. So in my case, showing a more heart-centered copywriting approach without using traditional conventional copywriting tactics, but at least want people to recognize what we're talking about in the beginning. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm curious, Onemi, how do you feel about the word sales?
A little more neutral probably than I have been. I tend to kind of align more with offer, but even then it doesn't 100% click. But I think that's because I'm still probably working through my own blocks of doing soul-centered work and trying to, build a business off of that. But I did have a thought as you were kind of just using that example, maybe a question, something interesting to discuss. Something that I found, at least in some of the research I've done so far, and chatting with people and whatnot, is how do you approach sales copy when your ideal clients don't know that they need your service, or because they're so in it, maybe like the example you used of your other client who the food kind of intuitive eating, maybe they're so in it that they don't know that they need support. Do you then tailor your sales copy to match that, or do you let them kind of go at their pace until they're ready to come to you? Because it was, how do you balance that? yeah, those two sides.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So what you're referring to is one thing that I always suggest, and I put this in the process as we get a little bit further, but one thing that I always suggest is really thinking about before you start any copywriting project, before you do any research, is thinking about who are you speaking to? Are you speaking to someone who doesn't know that they need this service yet, right? Like they're struggling, but they don't really need the service, then they're going to be at a different stage or level of awareness in someone who's actively searching for your service, which, that's the copy will be different. The copy you might have to I wish I had an example here. I might think of one throughout the class, or maybe I can provide one later. But yeah, the copy will be different. And that's why it's important before you just dive in and start writing copy, ask yourself, who am I speaking to? Who is the most ideal person for this offer? It doesn't mean you won't get people who are at, maybe stage 3 of awareness and you're speaking to level 1, someone who doesn't even know they need this service. It doesn't mean you won't attract the other people or they won't resonate, but you're thinking about really who is the most ideal for my service. And then you're writing to one person. Once you start trying to write to too many people, your copy becomes very vague and general, and then vague and general doesn't speak to anyone, unfortunately. So it's better to be really clear and try to speak to that one person, and then you will still attract other people through that process. So always kind of that prep work is really, really crucial as well. So don't just dive into your research and say, just say like, we're going to get into this, just kind of take some time to think about who that might be. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, so let's talk about the methods for conducting client research. There are so many ways, unbelievable, that you probably may have never considered when it comes to conducting client research. And I'm going to share, these are sort of in order of my favorite, and I'm going to touch on some of these and go in a little bit deeper. But the first one, so I'm going to give you a list here. We're not going to cover all of them. Some of them, once I show you one or two things, they'll become self-explanatory. And I might dive into this one here in a second. I'll show you that one, I think. But I'll start right off the bat with what I think is the most important and the best way of collecting good client data. Voice of customer data is what you call it, is like actually how they're speaking when they're describing their problems, their challenges, frustrations, etc. So is to get on the phone with, 3 to 5 people, more if you can, similar to what you did before, Dawn. Find people who you think would be a good fit for your offer. And ask them, what are their challenges as it relates to your problem? And I'll back this up even one step further, is if you have an offer that you're thinking about, but you're not really sure if people need this, or maybe you're not really sure what to offer your clients, then getting on the phone with people and asking them what they need is always the first step, is to making, because it doesn't matter how good your copywriting is. If you have, the most, like persuasive, manipulative, like highly converting sales copy on the planet, but you have an offer that nobody needs or wants, it doesn't matter how good it is. So it's really important that you're talking to the right people and first of all, understanding what that offer is that they need and that they want. So assuming that you have an offer that people are interested in, that you've talked to your audience, you've heard them say it, you've seen them give it to you on feedback forums and say, I'm struggling with this. You've seen it in your Instagram comments. Oh, how do you do this? So people are interested in X, Y, or Z topic. Now you're ready to offer it. Get on the call with 3 to 5 people. Find people who you think would be a good fit. As I said, could be newsletter subscribers, past clients, current clients, acquaintances, and ask them. And I've given you some questions here to get started with. Usually on a market research call, I usually spend about 30 minutes and then I offer something in exchange. So I will give a free coaching session, or I'll do a free high-level review of someone's, website page. And then I ask them these questions. And then through that process, I'm really wanting to understand, like, as I said, what the problems are, what are their motivations for wanting to solve this problem? What kinds of solutions would they be looking for? What are their goals? Like in the end, after working together or taking my e-course or taking my coaching program, what would they hope to achieve? And then that helps me understand really what's a priority for my clients. It helps me understand where they're at, what they're experiencing, what they're feeling in their own words. Because as I said, oftentimes we're beyond that. So we forget how people are actually feeling in the moment when they're in the trenches, really suffering or really struggling through a problem. We forget because we're way beyond that now. So this is where you can just talk to people and you can simply hear what they're saying. And what I will do is, because when I'm in the call with people, I don't want to take notes. I want to be present with that person. And I want to have an intuitive conversation where I naturally ask a natural flow of questions. So I'll record it on Zoom. And I've given you, if you go down here for tips for getting started, it'll just give you kind of my process on what I do. You can take your call on Zoom and then upload it to YouTube. George Cow has, this is his video for doing it. I had a process video. Oh, Nami, this is a better one than the one that I gave you, because I was having trouble anyway with the formatting. So George fixed that in this video. So I'm linking to his because his video is better. So basically then I just get the transcription, a free transcription from YouTube. And then what I can do is I can just kind of sift through after I've had the call with someone, and I pull out the relevant pieces of information. I highlight and I figure out, what are the problems? What were they saying that they really want? What's really meaningful and important for them? Like, what would they care about? What kind of benefits are they looking for in a program like this? What are the unique benefits? Things like that. So I'm asking these kinds of questions so I can hear them describe it versus me trying to come up with what I think people want. And so these questions, I've given you 8. Honestly, you can usually, like, I don't think you could get more than 8 questions in a half an hour, because you want to make sure you're asking open-ended questions where people are speaking, not just yes or no questions. I know, Nami, you've done this, and Dawn, you said you've done this. Have you ever taken that data, and have you ever used that data in your in your copy or on your offer pages?
I'm trying, yes, I have, but right now I'm scrolling through my notes trying to find my research.
And I know, Onami, you were working on this. You just did a huge market research sort of project or go. And how did it go for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was really helpful. Like, I think I am still probably digesting everything, and also, acknowledging that as my, I guess, as my ideas of building the business, because I'm still quite in the early stages, as that develops, then like I might need to do more research around it. So I think it's getting in the swing of things. That for me is kind of where I'm at in the process, and then making it like an iterative thing. Really building it into the process of just having the business, I suppose. So it's great so far.
Yeah, what I have found, usually when clients work with me, almost always I get them to start with the market research phase, because even if they're a copywriting client or not, what doesn't matter if it's coaching copywriting, you gain so much data from this, and most people aren't doing it. So they need that extra little boost, that little bit of accountability to go out there and talk to people. It's time consuming, yes. And if you're an introvert or closer to the introverted scale, it can be kind of daunting and overwhelming. Absolutely. But it is so worth it in the end, because then you have this great data to use, not only for your copy, but an understanding of what people want, listening and really getting that chance to connect with people in a more meaningful way. Okay. So I've given you some tips here for getting started with the market research. So I definitely, this is my top way, as I said. So when I'm working with clients, however, most of the time clients have not done market research. They haven't talked to people. Sometimes I'll get the odd one who they've had 1 or 2 interviews, but most likely they haven't done any. Most clients don't want to pay for me to do market research for them where I'm getting on interviews, because that would be a lot. Like, I try to keep my rates affordable for people. That would take a lot of time and their money. So what I have to do is rely on other methods. And I'm going to share my other methods with you. And this is great if, let's say, you don't have clients that you can do market research calls with, or you don't know of anyone who would be a great fit. Maybe you're just getting started. Maybe you've switched niches or something like that. Then we've got some other methods. And I still use these other methods too in my own
I printed it.
in my own business. Okay, so intake form questions is a great way to collect data research. One of the things that I often do is on my discovery calls, for instance. So if I have a virtual coffee, if I have a coaching program, anywhere that you have to get on a call with me, I always ask questions, even in this e-course, even if there's only two or three questions. I always usually start with like, what is going on in your life or business that's prompted you or inspired you to want to get on this course or get in this call with me? That can bring up a lot of good data because people are telling you what their real problems are, like what it is that they're experiencing. It doesn't have to be in depth, and it depends on the program. For my bigger coaching programs, I have more questions. For a virtual coffee, it's obviously a lot less questions. So you can kind of gauge that. And in the, let's go back here. In the document, I've given you some questions. These are questions that I ask. You don't have to ask them. You can change it up, but they do help you get and collect that data from people. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you're doing virtual coffees, some people might be filling out this information and they might not necessarily be a great fit for a client. So you're not always going to use the information. So you kind of have to be intuitive here and use your best judgment. But most times you get really good data this way. So I'm going to show you what I do with the data in a few moments. I'll show you how we're going to track this. But this is one thing that, you know, sometimes I talk to clients and they don't have any intake forms or anything when clients are working with them. Even if they become a client, there's nothing. So I would suggest, if you don't have a process yet, put in some intake form questions, or even after they become a client, you know, send them your questionnaire and ask them some of these things, and then save that data so you can then use it going forward. The thing is with your offer pages, right? Whether it's a coaching program, an e-course, anything like that, oftentimes these are living, breathing pages. So they're not like a one and done type thing. We're often reusing them over and over. Maybe they're an evergreen course or a program that people can sign up for at any time. We can always go back as we collect more data, as we gain more knowledge and understanding of our clients. We can always go back in and tweak things, add things in, and sort of tighten it up so that it's just much more specific to the types of clients we want to work with, who we think are the best fit for our services. So how I do my intake form is just through Acuity. On any online scheduler will allow you to do this, I'm sure, but Google Forms or even a Google Doc or a Word doc is fine too. So really simple is best. Don't kind of overcomplicate it. And then I've just given you some places where you can include intake forms. Like I said, I kind of do it everywhere. Something else is, excuse me, the next method is testimonials. So collecting feedback from people and also looking at competitor testimonials, which I'll explain here in a second. But testimonials, anytime you're offering a program or anytime you do an e-course, asking people for feedback. Not only does that help you improve your course, your content, your programs going forward, but it also gives you, again, clear insight into what people are thinking and feeling. Again, you can organize what they're telling you, the data, the feedback you're getting, and then you can put that into your centralized tracking system, which I'll show you. And then you can always refer back and use, again, their own language to help you write, you know, your sales pages, your offer pages going forward. Something that you can do as well is finding people in your niche or industry, a relative. I don't like the word competitor, but I'll use it for lack of a better word. Someone who does something that's similar to you. So in my case, you know, George Cow would have people in his audience that would resonate with my work. There's many other people that I can think of. I don't consider them competition. I consider that, George refers to them as niche mates, which I like better actually. But finding people who do work similar to you, going and seeing, you know, if they offer a coaching program or a course or something that they've offered that's something close to what you're offering, you can check out what their people are saying in the testimonials they're offering. Like, what are they caring about? Really, it's about copywriting. 80% of copywriting is about listening. It's about listening to what people are saying. It's not about finding and writing the language or supplying the language. It's about just listening to what your people are saying. Again, it has to be the right people. So figuring out who are those people that offer similar things to you, clients who there might be overlap, who might resonate with your work as well, and seeing how they're describing, the programs and services that they're taking from other people. That will give you tons of insight in terms of, like what they're thinking and feeling and the problems that they were challenged with as well. And I keep my testimonials simple. I just use Google Forms. I'm just going to see, is there any questions here? I'll just stop share for a sec. Yeah, go ahead, Anami.
So I was just wondering, with the just a few minutes ago, you were talking about, gathering information before you meet with someone, just kind of via the forums or whatnot. I'm just wondering though, do you find that gives you really quality data? Because I'm just conscious of, I think everybody works differently. I know for me, when I get that stuff before, I feel like I'm not fully not that I haven't thought about it, but that it's hard for me to sometimes like type everything out, like kind of the confusion, the things in my mind. So I'm just wondering, is that something that you find that you get really quality data from? Maybe it's just me and how I work. This could definitely just be a preference.
It's a great question. And that absolutely. And that's why we don't just rely on it solely. When I do market research, I would not just go to my intake forms and go, oh, okay, I'm just going to use this. I do, like, it's just one way of collecting data that doesn't require too much effort on your part, right? Because typically we're doing intake forms anyway. We want to make sure people are the right fit. There are many reasons why we might offer an intake form. It's just another opportunity for you to collect that data, but it's a very valid point. And it's true, even with my copywriting clients, what I find is I used to offer like a questionnaire. It depends on what service they're providing. But when I offer a questionnaire, I don't always get the best data. And so we talk about that with clients, like, I can talk with you one-on-one and that will help me get deeper answers, right? Obviously, that's going to be so much more effective. I'm going to get more meaningful information because people get tired. They don't want to answer the questions. Absolutely. That's a real thing. So you got to use your intuition a little bit. You got to ask yourself, is this kind of like deep enough? Is this really what people are thinking and feeling? And again, just kind of just using your best judgment, really. But good question for sure.
Yeah, I want to voice my process. So of course I've been studying with George and Tad for a long time, and especially with George over the last little while, and recently with Danny Gardner too. But so the process I'm in right now, watching George's thing, is like the big mistake so many of us made at the beginning was to create these huge courses and then nobody signs up. We spent actually years developing them. And so I'm going more and more to tiny courses, but I'm even going to the place where I want to create the sales copy. I'll use that for now. And the few things I need and have a sense of the material, but I want to pre-sell the thing. And so that's where I'm at today. And I've already done the systems beta, like you. I did a beta class with my students, so I've done that already, and I have a slideshow set up, but I haven't tweaked it or finished it because I want to actually see if, like I said, I tried selling and I only got one person. But that was live, and live, like we just talked about, is really hard, especially in the summertime because people are over the place. So I'm now wanting to sell a tiny course, but I wanting to pre-sell it for a good price and do what you're talking about. I want to have an intake form, which will be part of the offering of, and I don't know the words yet, but co-creating, like trying to get people inspired to, if you're really interested in systems, this would be a great opportunity for you, and maybe offering them a Q&A. So I'm just putting that out there just so you know where I'm at in terms of my development with that, because I'm really tired of creating things that nobody wants, which we're talking about. But at the same time, I know as an elder, as a teacher, as a mentor, I know people need two things: in the systems of some kind, just like you're teaching right now for writing sales copy. You're sharing your system, and we're going to benefit from that. So I can share my system of creating, using any kind of system actually, for personal, professional development. And also people need to learn how to learn. Nobody,
Absolutely.
but people don't know that. They just want to sign up for courses and only 15% complete them, so anyways, I'm just throwing that out there as much for me to express it
Mhm.
and clarify it, but I really like that you've studied with George too and Tad, so it gives me an opportunity to share with somebody else who's in their process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And as you were speaking, something came to mind when you talk about beta courses. George and I do things a little bit differently in this regard. George will offer a beta course and he will pre-sell his, not necessarily a beta course. He'll do beta classes and there'll be no sales page, there'll be nothing. It'll be like, this is a SEO class. Come at these dates. If you can't make it live, you kind of miss out. It's really bare bones, which is fantastic. And then he'll pre-sell his course and he'll do that without a sales page, which is really interesting because his is like, if no one's buying it and they're not interested in the pre-sale, then I'm not going to offer the course, which makes perfectly good sense. For me, my process is a little bit different. I write my sales page first before I offer anything. And the reason that I do that is because it gives me clarity about what I'm offering. It gives me a framework. Then I can talk to people. And when I'm writing content on Instagram or I'm writing emails to let people know what I'm doing, I have something to refer back to. I love that George does it his way. I have not been able to do that. I need that page in order for me to go, okay, this is what we're talking about. Like, this is why people would be interested. I kind of need to kind of go through that process. So the research phase is really helpful in gaining clarity, even for yourself. Like, I know maybe are you already offering the beta class already? Like, have people signed up and taken it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's for the systems class and the learning how to learn class. Both
Yep.
of those have already been run with students.
Awesome.
So now I'm trying to figure out if it's possible to pre-sell the tiny course, like before I even create that, because like I said, you can get so busy creating things and
Mm-hmm.
then so I really want to find a method, and because there's lots of things I'd love to share that I feel are valuable and important, but like you're saying, if there's nobody that wants them, so what? I
Right,
mean,
exactly.
they're
Yeah. And I mean, this is again going back to the research phase, again, talking to people, right? And saying, like, I have this idea. Is this something that you struggle with? If I were to put an offer out, would this be something, what would kind of inspire you to sign up for this class, this tiny course? What would be your motivation for doing that? So again, I think research is twofold. It's not just about getting the language. It's also really about understanding, is this something that your clients will actually be willing to pay for? Is it something that they need in their life? Is this a priority? Or is there something else that's more of an urgent thing for them right now? Something else that matters more? So anytime you're doing research, it's a win-win regardless, no
yeah,
matter what.
that's why I spoke of about your. I love. I mean, George is the master of feedback. I mean, he
Hmm.
just gets
He truly
feedback
is.
everywhere. So I bow to him. So yes, I want to, in this tiny course thing, I want to do exactly what you're saying. The intake form becomes a really big part of their initial research. So I'm still looking at the very first beta class, the very first tiny course with maybe 5 people, 3 people, 2 people, like
Yeah.
they're still giving me the nuts and bolts. But I really feel, honestly, from my personal experience, and what I feel is, I think there's organic growth and there's paid growth. And I think to be honest, I feel that a lot of George's initial growth was through paid growth. The reason I chose this method is, if I can sell classes, I'm paying for the advertising.
Hmm.
In 2018, I spent $8,000 on Facebook, but I made $50,000. So it was, a really good return,
Yeah.
but that needs to be more refined now, in terms of value for return on investment.
Hmm.
you know so
Unfortunately, nowadays, you like it's almost hard to grow an audience without paying for any
Oh,
ads.
totally.
Like you just,
Yeah.
like I've been doing that too, experimenting a lot more with it. And you just kind of have to, like, it's just the way it is now, unfortunately. Unless you were
Unfortunately.
lucky enough to be getting in early and having the right audience and building it up, then, and you were consistent for a long time.
Yeah.
But basically right now, that's what you got to do. And it's unfortunate.
But I think what you're teaching, and that's what I'm trying to emphasize and also glean from you more, is that how do we even do that better? Like, I want to get the best return on my money from Facebook. So, and I wasn't doing those things that Georgia was doing before. So I
Right.
didn't get all that necessary feedback. And,
Right.
like he's like I said, he's a master at it. Like he gets people to tell them what they want,
Yeah.
and then he offers it, it's like,
Even when he's doing his ads and his sales pages, I don't think George, he doesn't need to go through this process that I'm teaching. Why? Because George, exactly as you said, he's constantly in communication with his audience. He has a great engagement, whether it's through his paid content, like his paid coaching programs, or online. He's always got that direct communication. So if you can build that up with your clients, right, over time, and getting on the phone with people, getting people, engaged and stuff, you will eventually can be able to do that as well. So that makes a huge difference.
yeah.
George does not need to go to the level that, many of us do, because he has such great feedback already, as you said. Like, that's a huge, I'm glad you clarified that and pointed that out, because that's that's so true. I can hear a phone in the background. I'm not sure. Does anyone else hear that, or is that on my end? Oh, it's okay. I wasn't sure if what I was hearing. Okay, so I'll move on. It's 11:15. We're going to go till 11:30 my time. So it's another 45 minutes ish. And I want to save a bit of time at the end for you to ask questions once I kind of show things. So another great way of collecting research, and this is another favorite of mine, is by going into groups. I put forums here. Mostly for me, it's Facebook groups, and finding out, like, where are your people hanging, and then engaging in those groups and just kind of like paying attention to what kinds of questions people are asking, seeing how, again, what frustrations come up and problems that people are dealing with. For me, I have found this to be the best when I'm in a paid Facebook group. So meaning I've taken a course that comes with like a Facebook community that I've, paid for, essentially. Or like in George's Master Heart course, I'm in there because I want to be in there to grow my business, but also many of my clients, really ideal clients, are in there as well. So I can see what kinds of questions people are asking in that group. I can offer value to those people. I can let myself be seen in that group by just, responding to people's questions and paying attention to what kind of things are coming up and like where people are struggling with. This is such an effective way, because it gives you, again, that like you can see, you need to be obviously where your people are actually hanging out. So thinking about Facebook groups, where on Facebook may people be, like, and in your case, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to be in a paid group where your ideal clients are. It may or may not be. In my case, that just works out. But another way that you can do it, let me see if I can pull it up here, is if we were to go to Facebook, and something you could do is, like, for instance, I'm just in the search bar here. So if I went like, see what comes up. If I typed this in, what I'm going to get, and actually I want to go to groups. So I'm going to click down here on groups, and now I'm going to get all of these groups that have like this keyword in it, for instance, right? Maybe I don't need 101. I just need essential oils. Think about some keywords that are relevant for your audience. And then what I would do is I would come in here and I would look and I would think, okay, so for example, I just want to say something here is like young living, for instance, if I'm doing essential oils, may not be resonant for me. Like I might be like, I'm not into MLM or whatever, but I may still find some helpful information here, because you might find people complaining about things. You might see them expressing problems and frustrations that will be helpful for you to illustrate and help you differentiate yourself from other people who are, say, offering MLM type essential oils or courses or whatever. So what I would do is I would come in here, and you're looking for, you can find public groups, which means you don't need to join the group and wait to get in the group. And you also usually want to find where there's enough members that there's going to be enough engagement. And essentially you can go inside these groups, and this one is saying, yeah, I can still access the information here. But I can use the search function, and I can, like, I don't know, something like I can do nothing came up with that. So that was a bad example. But let's see if something comes up for the word kit. What kinds of information? So I can use the word kit. Let's say I'm making essential oil kits for beginners or something. And I can come in here and I can start to do research and see what people are saying. The other thing too is you can find these groups, you can join them, and you can just go in and be of value and be of service to the people that are in the group. You can start answering questions. You can start sharing your knowledge about certain topics that, that your clients are asking or your potential clients are asking, and just be a good human and just be in there being helpful. And that way, that will give you, insider knowledge in terms of what people are thinking. It's a really great way to conduct research. The other thing too is there will be some that are private groups, but if you feel like a group that's private might be a really beneficial group for you to be in, you can always request to join it. Usually there's some rules you have to follow. So you go in there, you be ethical and follow their rules. But oftentimes this is a great way. So I have on Facebook, I have, I don't know, I've got like 2 or 3 Facebook groups that I'm a part of that are like business groups for really authentic people who are like in the authentic solopreneur, ethical marketing kind of like headspace and want those types of practices. And I'm in those groups because I'm always wanting to learn myself and educate myself. And it just so happens that my clients are there as well. So it's perfect. So maybe that works for you. So that's one thing you can certainly try, or online forums and things like that. So some online places that you can go. Reddit is another great one. So as an example, what I would do for Reddit is I would just go to the Google search tab here. And like, let's say for instance, I'll just, again, I'm going to pick a keyword that's relevant for my business or my offer. And I'm just going to put that in. And then when I do that, I'm going to get all of these subreddits that are talking about this particular topic. So as you can see, I've typed in respectful parenting, and a lot of stuff comes up regarding like Janet Lansbury, for instance. So, okay. So if I click on this, you kind of got to go through, and what I can do in here is, I can read what people are saying about this particular topic. I can click on the comments section, and I'm not going to read through all of this, but I think you'll get the gist. Is I'm going to go through and I'm going to see how are people describing this, right? And like, here's the thing, respectful parenting, this particular type of respectful parenting that Janet Lansbury teaches, some people are saying it's condescending and it's delusional, it's maybe out there, it's not practical, whatever. How would that benefit you in your copy? Maybe you would point to the fact that yours is like really practical tips that people can do, or, maybe you would like, how can you use this information to help you stand out from what other people are saying? And the thing that you need to remember is when you're going through this type of research, when you're mining like forums or when you're looking on Amazon reviews or anything like that, you want to think, is this, relevant for your offer? Is this your ideal client? Would this be something that's worthy of talking about in your copy? So oftentimes what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm like, if I found something that I really thought was useful information, like for instance, also what I gather, okay, like if you believe your child can get himself dressed, okay, I'm trying to see if there's something good here. Or if they're just throwing a tantrum, you just acknowledge your feelings. Okay, so this person is just talking about how condescending this is. This might not be the best example, but essentially what I'm looking for is, and I'll give you the list of things that I'm looking for, but different problems, what people want, solutions that they're looking for. And then I'll pull this out and then I will track that information. And I will take sort of, even if I'm not sure if I'm going to use it or if I think it's relevant or something important, I will often take it, and I'm going to just give you a sneak peek at the message tracker. Well, this is too big for you now. Let me zoom out here. And then what I'm doing is, this is going to go into different categories. I'm taking the information, and if, for instance, this, I don't know if I should have had this kind of planned out, but let's just say this was something that was helpful. I can't rationalize with a 4-year-old, but damn it, it calms me down. I don't know. Let's just say that was a problem. I'm going to come in here, find the specific category, and I'm just going to paste it in there. I'm going to start tracking what people are saying. I'm going to start seeing, and then at the end, I'm going to come back and I'm going to analyze this sheet, and I'm going to see what are the themes, what are people most, what are people caring about the most? What's the biggest priority for people? And then I'm just going to help me use that to help me focus on the most important elements for my copy. So again, I just pulled respectful parenting because I had a client who does that. But if I was going through this, I would be spending time, and I would be going back to this main page, because there can be a lot of, crap in here that's not relevant, kind of just looking through and kind of getting a sense of what's interesting, and, maybe clicking on 2 or 3 that I find interesting, reading through the comments and really seeing what people are talking about. Let me just go back to my page here. Sorry, I've got to blow this back up. Has anyone tried this before, using Reddit or forums like that to gather information? Don, is that something you've tried?
A little bit. When George covered in one of the classes that we did, I did a little bit about it. I like your idea about paid form. Like, I'm trying to teach the systems class, and I've done a course with Fritjof Capper, one of the, world experts. And so that I've been wanting to figure out. I mean, we have a group that as cohort we can go to, but he also has a Facebook group. So I like that idea of, if it's a paid group, I feel more valued and more,
Absolutely.
I belong there.
Yeah.
I paid for it. So
Yeah,
so
I
that's a
100%
good.
agree.
Yeah, that's a good. Thanks. That was a good takeaway for me.
Yeah, I think you've articulated that really well, and probably many people who are listening back on this will say this too. Is that, yeah, for myself, I find the quality of the people that you cannot, not that sounds wrong to say, but when you're in a paid group, people are there for a purpose and they really want to get value out of it. So I just find the data is better. You really get to connect with more of the right people. So I never use the free, like Facebook groups. I never use those. I only use my paid Facebook groups that I'm in, because I find they're the most helpful for me. So yeah, so if you can do that, if you have the type of business where you can be in a paid group where your clients are hanging out, even better. Even if that's your own group, like that would be awesome. If you had a Facebook group that you started or something, you could get a lot of good data in there as well. So and I just want to see, Onami, you said, where am I? You said you just have to flag. I have to go at 20 past. Okay, no worries. Just, I'll send you the feedback form, and then you will get a copy of this. No problem. Okay, so let's go back here. So here's another way, Amazon reviews, which is very similar to Reddit. This is a really good way if you have, well, really anything, because you can find a book or a product on almost any, like if you have whatever you teach, there's almost a book out there for anything that you teach. So if you go to Amazon and you go under books, so usually I'm here. So I'm on even though I'm Canadian, I go to the .com site because I find the reviews, there's more. And then I would go to books, or you can even go Amazon Kindle store. And, in this case, I just did an example here, which I'm going to show you here in a second. But I would type in, like sales page or how to write a sales page, for instance. Then what I can do is I can find books that are, even if they're not completely relevant to what I'm teaching, what I mean is maybe this is someone who teaches really conventional, pitchy, sales copy. Obviously, that's not my market. That's not what I'm going for. But I can still go through these reviews and I can still read what people are pointing out. And I can use that as a tool to help me stand out from people who are offering courses, copywriting courses that are really persuasive, really manipulative, because I want people who don't want that type of sales copy, or who don't want to write that way. So I can see what people are talking about that way. And what I will often do in this case, now this is a really good example where you might get a lot of biased information. There's only 5 reviews, so it's hard to tell here. But if you're getting a ton of 5-star reviews, a lot of times people are, giving classes, workshops, something free to get people to go leave a review. So they're not always totally, unbiased or whatever. So I will usually stick within the 4, 3, and 2-star reviews. And sometimes you can get on a book and you can look at something, there could be 1,800 reviews. You're not going to go through all of those. I'll just focus on kind of those, and then I will start to look through, and I'm looking for, again, language that speaks to me, that I think is really interesting, that I think my clients will resonate with, that I think reflects the message and the values that I want to illustrate in my own copy. So I'm going to give you an example here. So I did, now where's my example? It's way down here. I don't know why I put it down here. Okay, so here's an example of Amazon review mining. So on that sales page example. So how can you turn sales that, or sorry, any information that you gather in your research into, sales copy or copywriting? So this is a kind of like just a fun example. It's not reflective of the copywriting that I would personally do, but I just wanted to kind of illustrate what that could look like. So in this case, for instance, someone said sales page without the drama. So this little piece of text up here that you always get in a review where they can put a little blurb is often really good, like copywriting for anything, whether it's sales copy or whatever you're writing. Because people will usually just have a short amount of time to say something really quickly about that topic. And then usually there's something really punchy in there, or something really like meaningful and relevant that is like, okay, this is interesting. Because if you're going to be writing, we talk about like, what are we going to include? You always want to be able to, they call it the hook in copywriting. I don't like that term because I think it has a negative connotation. But what we're talking about really is you got to be able to start your copy with something that's going to be interesting for your people. If we start it flat with a dead opener that no one cares about, or it's not relevant for where people are at, they're not going to continue reading. George talks about this a lot, whether you take his YouTube classes, video classes, any type of classes you take from him, where it's about creating content. He's always talking about like, what's that? You got to get them in the first 10 to 30 seconds. You got to make it interesting for people. Let them know why they're there. And often the way that I do that is just kind of getting right to the heart of the problem. So in this example, if you were to read this review, it talks about, her being, or this person being a newish business owner wanting to do their own marketing. They struggle though with how to write copy, how to appeal to their audience. They don't even know if the buy button should be red or green. So I was playing with this a little bit. Now, if I was doing research, I wouldn't focus on one review. I'd have tons of research to kind of go through. But as you can see, you can kind of take that using people's own language, and then I've turned it into something using that piece of review, that text. So want a drama-free copywriting process that'll boost sales, not stress. Now this is really hypey, sort of not the way that I would write, but I wanted to illustrate that for you. And then you could say, if you're a newish business owner who wants to learn how to write the perfect sales page, but you don't know how to appeal to your audience, or whether the dang buy button should be red or green, keep scrolling. This is an example of, the reason I put this in here is it's taking their words, but you're putting your own personality into it. It's not just, necessarily, sometimes, you are taking exactly what someone says, but it doesn't mean you leave your personality at the door, or you don't use your own tone of voice. How can you're still writing like from your own heart. You're just pulling out some of the words that people are using so that that's articulated in your copy, so that you're getting really to the essence of what people are feeling. In this case, right, if I was doing research, I wouldn't focus solely on one review or one piece of data. I'm looking at, if I see a lot of people are saying, I just don't know how to connect with my audience. I don't know how to appeal to them. I don't know how to engage them. I know that's a major problem for a lot of people. So I'm looking for those themes, and then I'm pulling it out. And then you can add fun things in if it's relevant, if that feels natural for you. I don't tend to write this. My writing tends to be like pretty just straightforward, because that feels authentic for me. But depending on what I write, I might add in some humor. I might not. It just really depends on what it is and what the project is and what I feel feels good for me.
I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yep, no worries, Don. Okay, so just want to scroll back here for a sec. And yeah, so in this section here, just take some time to think about who can you talk to in your audience, or people that to do market research with. What kinds of books might your audience be already searching for online to help them solve their problem? What kind of influencers are on Instagram, or who are they following on Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever your clients are kind of hanging out? where can you go to kind of see and hear the messages that they're saying to their people or whoever they're following or whatever over and over again? Again, book reviews are a great way, product reviews are a great way. And, just getting on the phone and talking to people is always the best way. Any questions before I move on here? Okay. All right. So very quickly, what kinds of information are you looking for in your research? So things that I'm pulling out and that I'm paying attention to is, something unique that makes, that makes my content stand out from what other people are saying. So if the majority of, the majority of people are talking about, wow, this, copywriting course or this book teaches you all of the psychological tactics to use and all the emotional power words to use to convert your clients into customers, I might use that as a unique selling point to say, hey, we're not going to be focusing on high converting sales copy. We're going to be focusing on connection instead. So that's an example of I'm seeing what people are, saying, and then I can think about how does that relate to my business. If most people are saying this, I'm probably going to want to say this because a lot of what I do is going against the grain of mainstream. I'm trying to, not always intentionally, but often it's about teaching out a different approach, like the new paradigm of marketing. So what is the mainstream saying? Okay, I'm probably going to go a different route here. And again, it's only if it's true. If it's not true, if I can't deliver on that promise, I don't include it. It's only if that's really relevant for what it is that I'm offering or teaching. So you want to think about that as well. As I mentioned, hooks, I'm going to use the copywriting term hooks for lack of a better term, but essentially I call it an opener. And it's just an interesting statement, a question, something that's going to appeal to your audience that lets them know within a few seconds that they're in the right place, that says to them, okay, I'm going to keep reading. Like this applies to me right now, or that sounds interesting. I'm going to check this out and read further. I'm looking for problems and the motivations, why they want to solve their problem. Why are they feeling the way that they're feeling? Solutions, complaints that they have about X, Y, or Z. Questions, I like to see what questions people are asking. This is a great way as well, not just with your copywriting, but to go back and create content based on questions that you're seeing people ask. Go create an Instagram video or a caption that answers directly the kinds of questions you're seeing people asking when you're doing your research. You can also use these in your FAQ sections as well, which is really helpful. You can see what kind of hesitations people have about the product or the service, unique benefits, metaphors, and interesting ways of expressing their ideas. So this is really good too. Is sometimes like just, like you said earlier, Dawn, having a metaphor for, the way that you write sales pages so that it's not so triggering, right? Like hearing how people are describing that in an interesting way. It's just like a new spin on something. It gives something a fresh idea. Like how many times have we heard like reclaim your time and energy or things like that? How can we say it in a new way? Your people are saying it in interesting ways because when they're just writing out a review or talking about how they're feeling, they're just expressing what's on their mind in a really authentic way. That's really helpful in helping you express your ideas in just an interesting kind of fresh way. And then obviously, how do they want to feel kind of like at the end of your program or at the end of the course, whatever. Those are the kinds of things that you're kind of paying attention to the most. And then when it comes to research, you can definitely go down the rabbit hole. So don't spend a ton of time. What I would say is, the variables are like, it depends. If you have, a $3,000 coaching program, you might do a lot more research. It might require a lot more copy. If you're just offering a free class like this, an hour might be enough, write the sales page, you're good to go. It just really depends. So what I would say though, is kind of time yourself, put yourself on a timer, say you only allow yourself 2 hours of research, because once you get into research, it can go on and on and on and on. So you can get really sucked into the realm of gathering too much information. And then when it's time to collect the data and organize it, it's very overwhelming if you have too much as well. So just kind of know that that's there and place limits on how much time you're willing to spend on it. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and then I'm going to show you what the message tracker is, kind of what this looks like. We can just stretch it out here for a sec. We've got a few minutes left and I want to show you the outline of what I do after the message tracker, kind of how this kind of ties together. So we'll take a sip of water, have a minute break here, and then, so Onemi, you have to leave right now?
No, sorry, 20 past. So in 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Let me here. Okay. So, oh, I'm on the wrong thing. Let me just go back to this. Centralizing your data. So once you've done all of that research, what do you do with it and how do you keep track of it? This is the big question. So throughout the years, I've had many different systems. I've tried many different things. Right now I'm using a spreadsheet and I'm kind of liking this the best. So this initial spreadsheet was my own spreadsheet and I've since kind of added to it. I'm going to go back out a bit because it's a bit close. Okay. And I've since kind of added to it based on certain people that I follow. Joanne Weeb had this initial template. I can't remember the lady that offered it. I'm going to have to include her link in here somewhere for her website because she had some really great information that I've then used in here. And I use this if you're a one-to-one client, excuse me, or we do copywriting work together. I fill this out for my clients and copy critiques. I have this all filled out. I do the research. Other than talking one-to-one with clients, I do all of the other type of research. And I fill this out so then they have a really solid tracking system of just data they can refer back to when it comes to said offer. So what I typically do is this is where I house all of the data. And what I like to do is, you know, if I'm offering a copywriting course, that's going to look different than maybe you know, a visual marketing class. So I would have a different message tracker for each. So you can either add in new tabs, but what I would personally do is just make a copy of this blank one. Maybe don't use the blank tracker, just make a copy for yourself and then call it like, you know, your systems course or whatever, Don, like whatever you're working on, and just use this tracker, message tracker for the data that you collect for that particular course. Anytime you get feedback, anytime you do market research, you can come back here and you can start adding and tweaking and adding in more data. If it gets too big, maybe you start fresh if you've got a new offer. So leave that piece up to you, how you want to do it. But essentially what this looks like, this is an example of an old one I did for a client. The information is the same, it's just not as pretty. But what I've done here is, let me see if I go right over. So we've got like, what is the problem? Like, and what do people want? So I did tons of research for this particular client. And then in the end, what we could do is then we could go through, and if I go back to this blank template, what I'll often do is once you kind of fill it out, once you get a lot of data in there, then you can go back in and you can pull out the key messages and just add in the top, you know, 3 or 5 challenges that people have. What are they repeatedly saying? What are the solutions that people are looking for? What are some of the objections that people have? Pull out those pieces of data. Then you're not looking at this big overwhelming sheet. This big overwhelming sheet of information. You can simply work with just what you've pulled out in this key message tracker. Now, if you're doing interviews, the research interviews, I like to separate what my clients are telling me in an interview from what I do, just like mining Amazon reviews, for instance, because for me, the priority is on what my clients are telling me. If I'm too busy to do client research, if I have a new offer and say I'm getting something out really quickly and I'm strapped for time, whatever that looks like, I might just focus on some of the other methods and I might not have time to do many client calls. Sometimes I only have time for one. It's not enough data, really. I want to see what other people are saying. But I will come in and once I get the transcript, I will pull out the information and I'll start to populate it. You don't have to use a system. I know, Nami, you had a really great Google Doc that one time that was really fantastic. If you prefer to use a Google Doc, that's great too. But you just need to be able to have somewhere where all the information is stored and organized so you can easily pull from it. So as an example, once you collect tons of data, right, you've done your research. Now you've got what are the problems people are feeling? Like what's the result people want? Who is this for? Who it's not for? What you can do is you can come in, you know, I did some analyzing of this client's data, and then I wrote some sample copy for her. So as an example here, this client, she talked about, like this was her initial copy, and it starts with ready to reclaim the time and energy dieting and emotional eating have taken from you. I'm sure there are many people who are feeling that they've lost a lot of time to emotional eating and dieting and all of these things. But the problem is, and if you read through the copy, it gets really coachy And it starts to talk about more from her perspective versus where her clients are at and what they're actually experiencing. So when you start to analyze this data, you'll see people aren't really talking about, nowhere did we see that people said, oh, I'm hearing a whisper that I need to start looking at this differently. No one said, I want to be confident in my food choices, because that's not how people are really speaking when they're in the thick of it, for instance. So that's the difference. So this particular client was talking about how she wanted people to feel, which is fantastic. You can teach people that in your program. You can teach people that in your course. You can tell them that that's what they're going to learn. But we're not going to start with that, because we got to meet people where they're at. So if we get into it a little bit deeper, what we learned, okay, for instance, this was just some sample copy, is that people were really obsessing about diet culture. And we talked about, it's not the restricting or the obsession about what to eat. The time that they're wasting is really about the time they're wasting about thinking about becoming someone else, someone smaller, someone prettier, more desirable. It's the self-torture women go through trying to be thin. That really hits home for people, because that's what women, her case, this is who she works with, is women. That's what they're feeling. And it doesn't mean that we have to dig in and agitate those problems, but we do need to be able to say what the problem is specifically and clearly for people to say, okay, that resonates. Okay, you really understand what I'm feeling. The rest of the copy can talk about how we're not focusing on weight loss, we're not focusing on diet culture, we're focusing on body positivity and all of these other things, self-love and all of these other great tools that she offers. But we at least got to be able to reach them and say, okay, I get that you're in this place, right? And then this is what we're going to be working on, or this is the result that I'm going to try to help you achieve. This is what we can do together. So this is where the big difference is, and why I think research is so important, is because we get into coach speak, really kind of like vague language, generalized language, or again, we're 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of where our people are at. And we start talking about what we think they need, but no one's talking about, I want to be confident in my food choices. No one says that, not very often. That's not really, if they're sitting there with their best friend and they're talking about their body issues and their struggles, they're saying how I'm just tired of comparing myself, or I feel X, Y, or Z, or whatever, like they're feeling crappy, they're feeling bad. And so kind of just, again, trying to understand what that specific language is really important. And I think, let me just see, I want to show you, I'm not going to get into this. This just describes the process. So as you're trying to understand, how do I do this? You can reflect back. I just kind of condensed it here for you. And then in terms of outlining your copy, I want to cover this very quickly. There's some resources at the end of the page. I've just gone through the resource doc and kind of pulled them all out, so they're here for you. And outlining your copy. So what I do is I have a sales page framework, which I'm going to give you access to. And what this does is there's a lot of prep work. Okay, so you can go through the prep work, which I recommend you do on your copywriting project. Again, it depends on how big the project is. So kind of just use your best judgment, but you do want to know who you're speaking with. So you might want to do this prep work, which I suggest. And then the most important thing here is the framework. So if you get on the framework, what I will do is, after I've analyzed the data, come back. After I've analyzed any of the data that I've put on this sheet, and I've pulled it out and I've kind of neatly put it in this sheet, so I'm not looking at this whole overwhelming spreadsheet. I've got a lot of stuff in here that I need. I may still have to reflect back to this from time to time, but now what I can do is I can come in and I can say, like, here's a title that will really resonate or whatever. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. If I pull up my own, I'll move this over, one of my own sales pages. Now, every sales page I have, they're all very similar. I just have one kind of template that I follow and I don't get too crazy. But as you can see, if I come back to this class, for instance, I've got my title in here. I've got a subtitle. So you can come in here and you can write it. You can pull right from your message tracker and you can pull out what you think is, relevant for people and just plunk it in here. And then as you're writing, you can just start stringing this together and kind of forming sentences and structuring in a way that is cohesive and coherent. But essentially, you kind of go through, I've got my opening headline. So I pulled out something that I felt would be really interesting for people, right? something a lot of people struggle with is thinking that they need to come up with all the language. They're stuck there staring at the blank screen, not knowing what to say. So I opened with that. And then I kind of get into the problem, what I found to be the biggest problem my clients were facing. And then very quickly, I say in 400 words or less, this is my introduction. I talk about what the solution is. Like, what is my offer here? It's a 90-minute live class. It's going to teach you X, Y, or Z. And then I get into like what you're going to learn, who it's for. And I've given you the template over here on the left, as you can see. Now, some of it you may not need to include. You might not want to follow the framework exactly, but it's all there and you can kind of put it all together. And this is essentially what I do. I add in a few testimonials, what you're going to get. And then all I'm doing is from my message tracker, I'm pulling out the key bits of information that I think are helpful. You know, a lot of this stuff, if I get into, right, like, you know, who it's for, people who struggle to write sales copy and find themselves deep in the weeds of not knowing what to say or how to say it. This was something that one of my clients said on a previous copywriting class. They struggled with this. I didn't write that. I mean, I had to kind of put it together so it was, you know, nice, but I didn't say that. Like, they said that. I'm like, yeah, that's what this class is going to teach you about. I'm not going to include it if it's not relevant, but I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it. There you go. It's there, it's done, and it's written for me. So then I'm just kind of putting this all together and I'm just essentially structuring and compiling it and putting this all together and in a neat little package. And again, on the template, if I go back here, you know, I've put in where you can put a call to action button again, if you want. And as I said, I don't follow it perfectly every time because it just kind of depends. I use my intuition. And then I add in some FAQs at the end. So these are things that I've seen people question or talk about as I was doing my research. And then I use those to drive my FAQs. And obviously I add in my own stuff too. If I think of something that's relevant or something that I didn't find in my research, then I'll add it in. But a lot of times that's all it is you're doing the research, you're collecting the data, you're organizing it, and then you're structuring it and putting it into this framework. Then now you got all of the information there. You just kind of have to use your own writing skills and editing skills to be able to go in and kind of clean it up. So it's easy to read for people and not convoluted and things like that. So I'm going to come off screen share here. Dawn, it's just you and I. And there you have it.
Good. No,
How are you feeling?
Good. I got some good takeaways. Sorry for the little interruption. I booked my swimming at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays and you have to get in there. And then typically something changed. So I got into a bit of a kerfuffle, but it's done. Okay. So yeah, just apologize for that. First of all, before that, I just want to ask you where you go for your pictures. Like, that's always another snag I hit. And what I'm trying to do is avoid snags. And in other words, if I see that I'm just going to take a lot of time on something, then that's not something I want to be doing, because in my system now, I've realized I've got so much time each week realistically to get done what I need to do. And I can't afford to go off on long tangents. So
yeah, I get into this even deeper in my visual marketing class. But one thing that I do lately, do you use Canva by chance?
No.
Okay. So Canva is a great place if you're creating graphics.
Canva. Yeah.
Canva,
yeah. All the time. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So what I'll do, I'm just going to stop screen. I'm just going to start screen sharing here for a sec. And I'm just going to show you. So there's a couple of things. I have a lot of Canva templates set up, so I'm not having to recreate things all the time. If I'm working on, like, just depends on what the graphic is. If I go to my designs here, I have things for my website and I have them sized at the size that I need so that they're ready to go on my website. And that also helps with load times, because you don't want massive images. That only slows down your website. So I kind of just know what I need. I have my templates in here and then I'll go grab them. So for instance, if I needed a square graphic for my website, what I often do is I have the template set up. And let's say I'm doing a copywriting class. I don't know if you can see where my mouse is, but on the left-hand side, I'll go to photos. Now I'm on the pro version. So if you're on pro, you won't get as many options, but there's still a lot of images in here. I might say like woman typing or something like that. And I'm talking about copywriting. So I'm kind of trying to find something that's relevant. For instance, let's say this was a good image. Let's say I like this. I'm like, okay, I will save this image, just downloading it from Canva, and I'll upload it to my computer. This is where I get most of my images nowadays. It's all done in Canva because I don't have time to be messing around. But the other place that I will go is unsplash.com. Have you heard of these guys?
No, I use Pixabay.
Okay, so Pixabay would be the same. I personally like Unsplash better. I find the quality of their images to be better. Some stock images I find are a little bit like, I don't know, too corporate-y or something. So Unsplash is another great one. But what I would do is, let's use the same keyword. What I would do is I'm coming in here. These images are huge. They're really high resolution. So I'm finding an image that would work. And as you can see, there's a little download button here. But what I do is I click on the image first. Let me kind of move this. And then I'm going to this download, and I'm finding the right size, because if I click the original size, 4,000 by 6,000, that's a massive image, and that's going to really have major lag times on your website. For websites, you don't need big resolution. Like, the smaller, the better. I will download it. I will kind of size it to what I need. And then even from there, I use a tool called Tiny JPEG to reduce the image size. But essentially, to answer your question, I use Canva right inside of there, or I use Unsplash. The nice thing about having a template, like once you create a let me come off screen share. Once you create a sales page template the first time, I just duplicate them on my website. I might move a couple of things around, but I just repeat. I'm so lazy when it comes to that. And that's not that I'm lazy. I just don't have the time to be fooling around.
Yeah. No,
it's like, I just got to get this out. I barely have enough time now as it is to even get in there and teach the stuff. So it's like, okay, I just got to get this out. This is where we're at. And so I have everything sized at the right size. I have the templates already in Canva. I just pull images right from Canva and I use those. But if I couldn't find what I needed in there, and I just needed a straight image, I go to that other website, Unsplash. I'll just type it in here for you.
Do you know off the hand how much Pro is?
I pay, I think it is about $10 US per month.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's worth it because there's just so many other things that you can do. Like if you are on the free version, I always say it's like 3 or 4 extra clicks to get certain things done. In saying that though, there is a lot you can do on the free version, and you can do everything on the free version that you can do in Pro. But like I said, for a few extra clicks. So if time and efficiency is a priority for you, then I definitely recommend Pro if you're using Canva regularly. I mean, I'm in Canva every day.
I pretty much use it for Instagram, Facebook, website.
I use it for my presentations as well, PowerPoints. I create it all in there.
Yeah, that person. So that may be something to look at. One other question, a practical question that I've been wrestling with lately is that, so what do you use for your signups? You use,
like Acuity? Do you mean for e-courses?
Yeah. Use your Acuity, and does that have the drip emails like?
So Acuity doesn't. So if I'm teaching a live class, I use Acuity because I want people to get the email notifications and everything else. If I was teaching a pre-recorded class and it was like an evergreen class I could sign up, I would use either e-commerce, which is on my WordPress website, and then I can have a drip series of emails set up where they get the email confirmation and then the course login or whatever, or an e-course content if you're doing it that way. Or I use ThriveCart. I have ThriveCart as well that I bought years ago, which also integrates with ConvertKit. Now you can, with Acuity, integrate with your email provider using Zapier. But for me lately, I've been doing live classes when I am teaching. So I just use Acuity because then I collect everyone's emails that way. They have to sign up through Acuity and give me their email. They get the automatic confirmation, and then I can create their emails set them up in ConvertKit. I don't get enough signups at this point to have to worry about zapping anything. If I had 50 people, then
that's where I'm at too. I don't want to kill because I don't, I'm gonna maybe get 5 people or 10 people. So it's like so I'm trying to figure out, but at the same time, I was reading George or somewhere that PayPal can be cumbersome. So sometimes I find if I just rely on PayPal, they may not get the messaging might not work as well as I'd
Mm,
like it. So that's where I'm wrestling with
yeah.
right now.
Who do you use for your website again? Is it Squarespace?
Squarespace, yeah.
Okay, Squarespace, excuse me, I believe has their own, it's probably, you know what though, the fees are probably
Yeah,
expensive or they're
yeah,
probably a lot. So it's probably not really worth it. But I do think they have some built-in thing in their website thing you could
yeah.
look at. The other option, like there's things like Gumroad. I know a lot of people use Gumroad, Send Owl. Thrivecart is one that I find really awesome and it's easy to use, but it's like a lifetime thing. I think it's like $500, so it's not cheap, and that's US. So, yeah, the only other way around it would be, are you teaching live or are these evergreen classes?
Both.
Because if they're live, you can do it through Acuity. Like they have a
Yeah,
payment thing in there, so you can
yeah.
easily do that. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about this, I know people who use Acuity because they do have the payment processor. If you're already paying for it, $10 a month, $15 a month, they have the ability to take payment through Stripe, PayPal. There's a couple. And then I've seen it where they've said, you know, you sign up for this class, there's no actual live class to attend, but then they're able to use that payment processor that Acuity has built in, and then they have like an automatic email that goes out that you can include the course content and you can customize your email follow-ups and your confirmation emails for every single invitation and every appointment.
Right, right.
So that is a workaround actually. If you're already paying for Acuity, that would be a workaround.
I'm not yet, so
Okay.
because I don't do much. I do any client work right now,
Right. Right.
so I
Yeah.
don't have that set up for that.
Well, if you're doing live classes in the future, it's got the payment processor. You can tweak your emails and follow-ups, and then you also have the ability for people to book the class and get the automatic reminders,
And
which
you
is
can
really helpful.
also, I'm pretty sure for free, you can zap to your Gmail. Like you
Yes.
can't with PayPal. You have to buy a paid zap to use it with
Oh, okay.
PayPal, but you don't with Acuity or with
hmm
so
Yeah, there's probably ways. I haven't had to look into it myself because I have found myself like Zapier or whatever it's called to be unreliable. Um, but I just don't have the patience to learn it, to be honest.
well,
It's one of those.
no, that's totally, yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, I only have so much time each week, and I want to get done the things that, you know, I don't want to be
Absolutely.
spent technologically doing things. Yeah, so
Yeah.
thanks. I got some good, I finally getting the idea of languaging, and I think I have enough content. Like I like testimonial. Like I see now how you use the language in the testimonial to write the sales copy. I've got that. Like I haven't got that
Yes.
before. I sort of, so that's good because I got lots of material to wade through. I did find the thing I did with all those interviews. I did quite a few students, so I got the keywords from that too. So I can. It's too bad. I'm a minimalist. I'm a mind mapper, so I tend towards
Mm,
the smallest amount of information, which is too
yeah.
bad because I didn't really save their language. I just got the
Right.
key
Yeah.
words.
But
But
that's
that's
okay because you can always, sometimes it's good to start fresh. And mind mapping, actually, that you mentioned, is also a great way to get your ideas out and to figure out what people are thinking. If that works better for you, mind mapping would be a great
well,
tool.
that's a good idea. Actually, I could take this list I've got
Yeah.
of spiritual honor ancestors, following the life
Yeah.
cycles, resiliency, regeneration, think globally, act globally. So I could make those a mind map and then use that as a, you know, and I liked your idea too of Yeah, again, I love templates, so I'm in my systems every week. I'm working on a template, not just that particular email or that particular Facebook whatever, or that particular video. One thing I will tell you that I found really helpful that maybe you can pass on to others who might be, I found making a video really, like I took my sales copy and then I made a video knowing
Yes,
that I wasn't going to use that video. So I was free to just, and then I
totally.
analyzed the video and I saw, I, I got, I was amazed how much good information got out of that, of how I was saying thing and what was good, what was not good and stuff.
Mhm.
So that's because my template now is I'll kind of begin with a sales copy, then I'll make a video, but not one I'm gonna post.
Just to get the transcript,
Just to get the
essentially.
transcript and just get the
Yeah.
spirit, the essence, because I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a tip that I give my clients as well. And in the original copywriting course, that's one thing. And I tell people that's a great way too to get your own tone of voice, like your own personality to kind of
Yeah,
reflect
yeah,
it through.
yeah, yeah. Because when you're just writing, sometimes
Yeah,
it's like you say, "Who wrote that?" That's
exactly.
not me, But yeah,
Yeah,
if I'm taping, I go, "Oh, that, yeah, yeah." And
absolutely.
also sometimes, yeah, that's too much. It's great your personality, but yeah,
Right, exactly.
yeah, tone it down. I just want
Yeah,
to
I think
give
that's a
you